Welcome to this week's episode of Insight. During this week's show, we're going to cover three topics. The first one's going to be, we're going to discuss the controversial comments that the Prime Minister made in meeting with the Swiss Armenian community. Then we're going to move on to some updates on the media matters in Armenia and end with discussing some new interesting developments on the business front in Armenia.
We must also return to the history of the Armenian Genocide. We need to understand, well, what happened and why did it happen? And how did we perceive it? Through whom did we perceive it? How is it that in 1939 there was no Armenian Genocide agenda? And how is it that in 1950 an Armenian Genocide agenda appeared? How did this happen? Should we understand this or not? Should we engage with these topics or not?
Based on these two statements, his critics have actually pointed out that he's actually stepping into denialist territory, which he actually seems to be. Let's dissect each of these statements. On the first one, there was no Armenian genocide on the agenda in 1939, since the phrase genocide itself was not even coined until 1943 by Raphael Lemkin. And it was not until the post-World War II period in which universal human rights were in any way coded into law, as poorly as they have been defended since then. Moving on from that, obviously Armenians in the Soviet Union in 1939 were in no position under Stalin to raise these issues, and the post-genocide Armenian communities spread around the world had no such capacities or political muscle to raise this issue. On the second point, no, we do not need to revisit what happened during the Armenian Genocide. It's one of the most studied events in history. We know who did it, why, and to achieve what purposes. A few days after his meeting with the Swiss Armenian community, he actually held a press conference in which he clarified and walked back many of his statements.
The Armenian Genocide is not only undeniable, it is part of our identity. If someone wants very much, wants it not to be so, they cannot do it. There is no such force. It is impossible. It is in my blood, in your blood, in all our veins. It is part of our identity. What kind of discourse is this? Who do we want to prove and to whom? Who do we want to prove anything?
Frankly, that is not good enough. He needs to come out and publicly apologize for his statements. Moving on to analyzing this, the first question comes up is, why would someone who frankly has such good political instincts as far as what the audience wants domestically in Armenia would say such things that essentially divide his supporters and unify all of his political adversaries? His opponents have speculated that this is part of his appeasement program or agenda with Turkey. This is possible, but it's not likely the primary reason for this narrative. I think this is very deep, very personal, and he has specific problems with certain sections of the Armenian diaspora, and specifically Armenian diaspora organizations, for whom the genocide issue is on top of their agenda, unlike it is for his government. The dead giveaway are the following comments from his press conference.
The matter of the relationship between the Young Turks and the Armenian Revolutionary Federation is well understood. Moreover, when we politicize this and try to use it as a tool, for example, to criticize today's Armenian Revolutionary Federation, the whole topic changes. It becomes completely different. It turns back into discussions on the past and present, and so on. But could it be that certain topics, certain circles, certain painful points of ours have been and are being used to make it impossible for us to have our homeland, the Republic of Armenia, as an independent, sovereign state? Could such a thing happen? Again, I say, I have my version of the answer, and I speak about it from time to time under different headings, but I don't want to force that answer in any way on any of our citizens. I don't want to force it on them. I am saying, people, let's think about this.
What all of this tells us is that he's as obsessed with the ARF as the ARF is obsessed in destroying him. to an extent that he's actually willing to take no-win political positions. If you want to understand the crude undertones of his argument, he's saying that anybody who argues against further developments of Turkish-Armenian relations is actually working on behalf of Russian state interests. In truth, he is wrong about the reasons for the lack of relationships between our two countries. The surface level reason is obviously the veto that the Azeri regime has on the establishment of Armenian-Turkish relations and the opening of the border, and that's something that the Turks have handed them for whatever else they get back from the Baku regime. Frankly, there's an underlying, much more deeper reason. The Armenian Genocide was the founding act in many ways of the modern Turkish Republic. And they, in many ways, understand that. And the Turkish body politic and state system has frankly never forgiven us for the fact that they murdered us and that we had the temerity to survive. The ARF could be wrong on many things, but they're certainly not responsible for the sick and degenerate nature of the political system in Turkey. In short, Mr. Prime Minister, this is no time to play politics on such sacred ground. This is the time of national unity at a time of national peril and threat, and all of this must start with you. I come to you today with the launch of our winter fundraising drive. As many of you know, independent media and funding for it in Armenia and around the world is under attack. So I'm going to ask all of you to go to the following website, donate and give generously, and hopefully you actually sign up to give on a monthly basis. And why do we need this? If you want to describe what we do with CivilNet is, if I was going to put it in one sentence, is because we are always there. For example, what was going on in Artsakh, from the beginning of the aggression in 2020 to the blockade, to the tragic ethnic cleansing, we were always there on the ground, bringing you the news, as tragic as that news was. And we continue to be there, bringing you all the positive and negative news from Armenia and from the region. So I'm going to ask you to go to that website and give generously so that you continue to support programs like Insights and the other fantastic programs that we have on CivilNet. Our last item of the week is actually interesting business news from Armenia. Team Telecom, which is one of Armenia's primary telephone provider, has actually made a purchase of a broadband company in Ireland, one of the largest telecom companies there. The deal was actually concluded with the major international investment company, Brookfield Corporation, which will continue to operate as a minority stakeholder in the company. Imagine the company that's being purchased provides fixed voice and wireless broadband internet services across Ireland. According to a press release from Telecom, this is our first major deal in Europe and a significant milestone for future growth. As an Armenian company, we are proud to expand our business scope and open new horizons. For the record, this is their second large foreign investment. They own a phone service actually in our neighboring country of Georgia. This seems like minor business news, but it actually isn't. There's actually, what I mean is that the cultural reasons for this are actually far more relevant than the business reasons. We are, as a nation and as a country, slowly establishing the middleman business culture that once had Armenian merchants running trade routes from this region all the way to Indonesia. In the modern context, this sort of manifests itself in the IT sector, but it's actually not limited to that. Currently in Armenia, we actually have very well-run outsourcing firms, companies that are focused on jewelry, food and restaurant industry, and the famous black sheep that nobody likes to talk about, which is the online gaming industry, which actually brings in tremendous amounts of money to the country. In conclusion, what is interesting to me in this case is that this is the first time where this culture, this business culture, is actually being set up in the context of a sovereign Armenian state and not in the diaspora. The reality is, once this Armenian mercantilist gene is unleashed, this is a country that is bound to overperform. Thank you for joining me in this week's set of Insights.